So we're holding the last year on Hilchos Niddah, the second half of Siman Kuf Tzadik Tes, and then one Seif in Siman Reish. In Siman Kuf Tzadik Tes, we discussed the importance of Bdika and Chafifa right before she goes to the Tvilah. That it needs to be a thorough check. She needs to comb her hair, check her body, rinse her body, bathe her body, do everything possible to make sure that there's no chatzitzes. Very important part of the Tvilah process. Otherwise, the Tvilah will not count. So this matters very, very much. And there are certain spots, of course, that have to be checked more than others. There are certain things that cannot be done on Shabbos. So we discussed that before, on how do you overcome that, how do you deal with Tvilah on Leil Shabbos, or Tvilah in Motzei Shabbos, when things have to be done close to the Tvilah. As close as possible is also another important nekuda. We can't put too many hours in between the Chafifa and the Tvilah, because then things can become entangled again. All her preparations can go to waste, and she may have to do it all over again. So obviously, not only is it not advisable, it should not be done. But there are times when there is more distance, in case she had to do a little bit on Friday afternoon, and all the kinds of situations when you have 2 days Yom Tov. But either way, it's important that it should be as close as possible. Important that she check herself very well prior to immersing herself in the mikveh, and for that purpose we also have the mikveh lady that double checks everything. We're holding Sif Ches. In Sif Ches, we're talking about a regular situation. In other words, Bimei Chol, a regular weekday, that there could have been some time in between her preparations and the Tvilah, the actual Tvilah, and as a result of the time in between them, either nothing happened, in other words, she was okay, there was not that much activity on her part, no reason to suspect that some dirt got attached to her. Nonetheless, we said lechatchila there should not have been so much time. So the Mechaber says bimei chol in Kol Shekin in Yom Tov im chafefa v'yena atzma hayom v'tabla b'leil yom acher al tala tevilah. The Mechaber just says Poshet that if she did do the chafifa and checked herself, these are two separate steps. The chafifa, cleansing herself, including combing and doing everything necessary to make sure that there's nothing on her, and she examined herself, which is Min Torah, as we said. That was done during the day. But the Tvilah came out in the night of another day, because in Judaism the day follows the night. So let's say she did the Chafifa on Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, and she did the Tvilah at night. These really count as two separate days. Still, also la Tvilah b'di'eved. B'di'eved the Tvilah counts. Even though the Chafifa and the B'dika, in other words the two of them, were not close to the Tvilah as they should be. How close should they be? So this is discussed at length in the Gemara, that even though we say that they have to be close, what does it mean to be close? Does it mean that they could be one in the day and the other one in the night, but they're close to each other, like a half an hour apart, right before sunset? Does that count as close? Or does closeness mean that they have to be in one oina, that they have to be at one given time frame, like both during the day or both during the night? Now, if you say close means in the same oina, which we're familiar with this term, right? Oina from before, they could be many hours apart and still count as being in the same oina. Or does samuch really mean very close to each other? Well, very, very close. Is it okay then that one is in the day and the other one is at night? Okay, so this is part of the question over here. What exactly is included? In other words, what counts as being samuch to the other? From the Mechaber, all we see is that if she did it b'di'evet in this way, in other words, she did part of it during the day and part of it during the night, that it's also not tvila b'di'evet. Aval im lo chafefo klal, lo also tvila. This, of course, the Mechaber emphasizes would definitely not serve her needs, and that is that if she did not do any chafifa at all. Even though later on she was me'ayin, and she checked herself, everything looks okay. Even if the chafifa was right after the tefillah, and she combed her hair with the comb, and she did not find anything unusual. Shum nima kosher. She did not see any hair that was entangled. Also the tvila. She did the chafifa where the hair is, but she did not check her body. In other words, even if she did the chafifa, the mokum seir, but she did not check herself b'shar gufa, shelo also the tvila that does not count she'iyun agufa dvar Torah. So the iyun of the body, the examination of the body is a dvar Torah. In a Torah she has to examine herself. That's even more important than the chafifa itself. Why? It could be that during the tefillah there was a chatzitza. If she didn't examine herself, it could be that at that point there was something and maybe later on it fell off. So to be me'ayin is very important. Siif tes, Bamed dvorim amurim, when is all this said? B'shar kol haguf. All that we said about chafifa and iyun is very important regarding the rest of the body. Ava bebeis astorim, if we're talking about the concealed places of her body, kivan she'ein tzrichim lebias mayim, as we've learned before, since those places do not really require that the water should actually enter there. Im lo iyino oisam koydem lechen, if she did not examine those areas, and later on she checked. She did check later on. She did check later on and she did not find anything unusual there. Shum davar. Also not tefillah, then the tefillah counts.
Later on, yes, she was already told.
Exactly. So we're not going to be as choishish over there. And the Mechaber says because you don't really need bias mind there. So the task asks over here, wait a minute. But we've learned this also before, that you do need at the very least royu, that it is possible for the waters to get there, even though it doesn't have to enter it. Right? As we will see later on in Sifyut Beis. So the Taz just explains that because it's nistar, it's concealed, usually something that would be a chatzitza does not enter there. Therefore, we don't suspect. Unless you actually see something. And that's what takes place in Sifyut Beis, which we'll soon see. So in the base of store, we're not going to be so machmer. Even though lechatchila, she should be checking herself there too. Alright. Sifyut. Chafefo ve'iyeno v'tovlo. She did do the chafifa. She did examine herself. She went inside the mikvah. And as she's coming out, all of a sudden she sees, as she's coming out, a double choitzes. Now where did this come from? Okay, now remember what we said before. Chafifa in the iyun, lechatchila, need to be close to the tefillah, right? Important. What happens if it's not close? What happens if it's several hours away? In other words, several hours before the tefillah, she did the chafifa. Then some things can happen in between. Now, of course, there's always a possibility that something in the water or something later after she came out, of course, that's a possibility too. But the more time there is between chafifa, iyun, and the actual tefillah, there is a possibility, especially if she has children at home. Right? She handles them, she fed them, as we'll soon see. That's also a possibility. So she has to be careful. The more time she puts in between the hachonas, the preparation, and the tefillah, she really has to be extra careful. So getting back to the machlokes, or to the differences the different dayas over here as far as what is close. It's a machlokes of Rishonim in the Pshat here. If the chafifa is samoch letfiloso, then of course the halacha is that she doesn't have to be chayzer to do chafifa and tvila again if she finds this chatzitza. The only question is, what does samoch mean? So most Rishonim explain that Gemara that she doesn't really need anything. If they were close enough, the chafifa and the tvila, we assume that the chatzitza that she is discovering now came about or somehow attached itself to her after the tvila. In other words, if we really determine that the chafifa, the iyuna, was done very close to the tefillah, that's the assumption that we're going to make, that she doesn't really have to do anything all over again. The Rambam says she doesn't have to maybe do chafifa again, but she does need another tefillah. Why? They explain because she's becheskas tuma, since she still has a chazara that she's tmeya, so maybe the chatzitza was there from before. What did the Mechaber say? Mechaber pretty much quoted the halacha of the Roiv of the Rishonim. Therefore, he says like this: Chafefa ve'iyino ubetovlo ubalioso nimshol ladova choitzes. So on the way out, she finds something that is choitzes. Im betoch oina shechafefa tovlo. See here, he mentions the word oina. If it's within the same oina that she made the chafifa, she was also toivel eina tzricha tvila acheres and all, like Rav Rishonim. Vim lov tzricha tvila acheres. If it was not in the same oina, then she does need another tvila. So before we see the Ramah, he does add uvuleharambam ben kach uben kach tzricha tvila acheres. He does mention the Rambam as a second opinion. According to the Rambam, she discovers something on her body afterwards, regardless of whether it was samach or not. She does need a new tevila. And obviously, one who did everything right, the chafifa was close to the tevila, she doesn't have to do the chafifa again. We just have to be machmer, and she has to be toivel again. The one who did not do it close to begin with, well, she would have to do the chafifa all over again. That's basically the two opinions in the Mechaber. The Ramah adds, "Apal pi shehoisa chafifa samoch letvila, kegoin shechafefa beyoim samoch laerev." Let's say the chafifa was in the day close to the night, v'tovel b'tchilas halayla, and she immersed herself in the beginning of the night. Hoil v'hoyu b'shtei oinos. Since that is two oinos. You see how the Ramah is explaining this based on Bishayos in the name of the Rambam? That since these are two oinas, but they're close, but they're two oinas, then she would have to do it all over again. Because the Mechaber said if they were, or as long as they were in one oina, then we don't have to be concerned. We figured, you know what, maybe this came later. It wasn't there from before.
So is the Ramah saying that under all circumstances you can't do the Ian and the Chafifa during the day? That seems to be the implication of the Ramah.
No.
And the Ian.
They can be. Remember, there are situations where it is going to be done during the day. But here we're talking about a problem arose.
But it seems to be implied that under a normal, regular situation,
right,
the Ian and the Chafifa should be done at night.
Yes, unless it's Erev Shabbos. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Should be as close as possible. Should be the same way now. And that's what the Shach is going to say. The Shach is going to say that the Yesh Poiskim ein mechalkim ben toich oina ela ben samoch letvila o lo she'im hachafifa samoch letvila ein tzarech latzav velocho velitva v'imlav tzricha latzav velocho velitva. B'chein das arayla. In other words, there are some Poiskim that are not going to be mechalek, whether it's within the same oina or not, unless it's samoch letvila or not. In other words, the oina does not matter. Because if it's in the same oina, they could be several hours apart. So what's more important is that they should be close to each other. Okay, that's a right. But the Shach at the end says, Yesh lehachmir kishtei hadeyas. One should be machmir like the two opinions. Meaning what? Try to have it in the same oina. Try to have it close to each other, as close as possible. Because these are the two opinions as to the proper understanding of the Gemara of what samach really means. Can it be that there are two separate oinas as long as they're close to each other? Or if they would be in two separate oinas, even though they're close to each other, that would not be good. So close to the night, while it's still day, and the tefillah being at night, even though it may be close in time, it's two separate oinas. So that, from the mechaber you see, betoch oina, if it was within the same oina, then it would be okay. So one should be as careful as possible, obviously, mechatchila, to do it at the same oina. Now this would only pose a problem if she indeed found something. I mean, if nothing is found, there's nothing to worry about, that she did the chafifa early. So the points can write down that if it's easily possible to go back and to be toivel, one should be machmir like the Rambam, like the second opinion of the Mechaber. Right? However, it's important to keep in mind that the whole machlokes here is if the chafifa and the tevilah are in the same oino, and are they close to each other? Because if they're not at all, then obviously it's understood from the Gemara that another tevilah would be required. I think we can go on to the next sif. Sif Yud Aleph. B'med dvarim amurim b'shelo nis'asko be'oiso hamin achar tevilah. So here we're going to see a leniency that she saw a chatzitz on her upon coming out of the tevilah. And now we have a suffix. Was that chatzitza there before? Did it come about later? And that, of course, would depend somewhat on if it was samuch letevilah or not, her chafifa, whether she needs to go back to the mikveh again or not. But the Mechaber adds in Sif Yudalet that b'med dvarim amurim, that she may have to go back in b'shelo nis'asko be'oiso min achar tevilah, if she did not have anything to do with that with that material that she found on herself and her body after the tevilah. אבל אם נסעסקו בוי בין טבילה לבדיקה, אינה צריכה טבילה אחרת. But if she was actually involved, if she actually did something, involved herself between the tevilah and her checking, her examination later, in that type of material that she found on herself, then אינה צריכה טבילה אחרת. Then we don't require her a new tevilah, שאני טוילה אויסו במין שנסעסקו בו, because I will assume that the chatzitza that was found on her is from that min shenis askabor that she got involved with. Avalim lo chafefa koydem tevilah, but if no chafifa was done before the tevilah, ain't toilet boy, then we're not going to make that assumption. Even though she did get busy or involve herself with that min, the fact that she did not do chafifa before disqualifies the whole tevilah. This is also a question. I mean, that's obvious. We already saw that before. If there's no chafifa, the tevilah doesn't count.
Right.
So that's the question they ask. The Mechaber here, what are you saying here? That's a chiddush. I mean, we know that. Even if she did not find anything. Here we're talking about she found something. Okay, we got to figure this one out. She was nisasek, she was not nisasek. Okay? But if there was no chafifa, then it doesn't matter if she was nisasek, if she was involved in something else. It's a good question. So the Shach simply says that the Mechaber just said it derech hagav. Since he's already talking about the whole halacha of finding a chatzitza afterwards, whether she was nisasek or not, he says, you know what? That will not matter if there was no chafifa. In other words, it's derech hagav. Yeah, we know that. Derech hagav, since he's already talking about it, he mentions this, that, by the way, no chafifa would basically rule out anything else. There's no reason to even consider it. The Taz seems to be saying a whole different new din, that the chiddush here is that because there was no chafifa, does not mean that there was no chafifa at all. What the Mechaber is trying to say is that there was no chafifa close enough to the tevilah, which means what? It was very, very far apart. So the chafifa being very far apart will therefore not make things easier. So even though she was nisaska with oisamin afterwards, the fact that the chafifa was very far apart, it is as though there was no chafifa. In other words, there was a chafifa, but it was so far apart that it is as though there was no chafifot. Shach brings down also another explanation by the Bach that is talking about that she wasn't chayfer for her entire body, but she did her hair. Anyway, these are just different propositions as to why the Mechaber needs to mention this din, when we know that if there's no chafifa at all, no matter how good she dipped inside, even if she checked herself later, it's not good. Just to see it inside one more time. If she did nisasek boy, was involved with it between tvila and the bdika, and tzricha tvila acheres, she doesn't need another tvila. Shani toile oiso v'min she nisasek boy, because I assume that this has something to do with that material that she handled after the tvila, and it could have happened within a few minutes afterwards. But if she was not chayfet before the tvila and toilet boy, we're not going to link it to that. Even though it's true that she was nisasek, the fact that she was not chayfet basically disqualifies the tvila. In Sif Yud Beis, Mechaber continues on to say that what we just finished saying in Yud Aleph about being nisasek, about handling certain materials after the tvila, the din would be somewhat different if the issue that arose was the gabe beis storm. As we mentioned earlier, beis storm, one could be lenient somewhat. So b'med dvarim amurim, that there could be a problem here upon finding a chatzitza after the tvila, unless she was nisasek. That's b'shar kol haguf. Shar kol haguf, the rest of her body, you want to figure out, wait a minute, was she nisasek with this? Maybe that's why she has all this dirt or chatzitz or whatever on her. And if she was not nisasek, then obviously we would suspect that it was there from before. Right? Because what happened here? What happened was that she did not do things properly. She did not do the chafifa close enough to the tvila, and as a result of that, there's always a possibility that the chatzitza was there from before. So unless she did it close, then we assume it came afterwards. But if it was not close, we don't make that assumption. On the contrary, we make the assumption that it could have been there from before, unless she was nisasek. So the nisasek would be a leniency for someone who even had the chafifa far away from the tvila a little bit. But she had a chafifa. So comes along the Mechaber and adds, still, where is there a problem? With the rest of the body. But in those concealed places that we spoke about before, where one can be a little bit more lenient, here, if she did not examine them before the tvila, and after the tvila she was also not me'ayin. You see the addition here, detail? Then not only that she was not me'ayin before, she was not even me'ayin afterwards. Until after she was busy being nisasek with something that could be a choitzes, and then they found that min on her. Here you can be mekel, even though so much time went by, because it's beis storm.
But didn't she have to be in before, even on the beis storm? I don't understand that.
Lechatchila, right?
Lechatchila, she has to be in here. He's saying not before and not after. Yeah. And then she got involved in something maybe for hours.
Exactly, yeah. So the Shach brings the Rekeach, and remember, we covered this in last Siman, Kuf Tzadik Ches, that the Shach says that there are some who are machmir. You can't just carry on like that for a while, and then just discover it now and assume this must have something to do with what she was nisasek later. No, this could have been from before. But the Mechaber was linked with beis storm. Sif Yud Gimel. Chafefa koydem tvila. She was chayfet. She did the chafifa before the tvila. Ubein chafifa letvila nisasek b'dvarim hachoyzis. But between the chafifa, now this could happen. Between the chafifa and the tvila, she did get involved in things b'dvarim hachoyzis. She did get involved in things that could stick to her and could be a chatzitza in her. Or shenasna libno shtavshil. Another example would be she went ahead and fed her son. She gave him some food, used her hands to feed him. And these are things that are royally dobik that can easily stick to her. So between the chafifa and the tefillah she did this, lo also lo tefillah. Then the tefillah doesn't count. What do you say to that? Nothing is found. Even if after the tefillah she checked herself just in case there's something there, she didn't see anything. Why not? Shani oime, you know what? It still could be that stuff stuck to her. And I say that when the time she came out of the water, it fell off. And she needs another tefillah. This is a big chumrah. I saw in the Shiur Halevi that he brings down the scroll here. The most Rishonim are not machmir if she was nisasik b'dvorim achoitzitzim between chafifa and tefillah. Why? Because the Gemara's sugya there is talking about taharas, but not agabe the woman being able to be tahor for her husband. There's a chiluk between taharas and between a woman being tahara for her husband. So here, apparently the Rishonim learned that chumrah that were machmir, even if she did not find anything later on, the fact that she was nisase between the chafif and the tefillah invalidates the whole tefillah. Just because she didn't see anything when she came up, that just could mean that it fell off. The Ramah, however, adds on this, let's say right before the tefillah, she checked herself again. Did a quick check. She does see that there's nothing. Even though she handled stuff, she fed her child, she checked herself one more time. And she doesn't see anything strange. She doesn't need another tefillah. So this would be a good idea. And actually, not only a good idea, she should do this if she did handle stuff. In this case, there would be no problem because the checking would be sufficient. What else can she do? She can put on her clothes between chafifa and tefillah. She should not take her baby with her. She should not hold him. It could be that the child is dirty. So as long as she's careful, there wouldn't be a problem. The issues begin when there's too much time between chafifa and the tefillah, and then all kinds of things can happen. So that's why it's important that the two should be as close as possible to each other. She checks herself, she cleansed herself, she combs herself, and she goes into the mikvah. Then, if something came up later, since she did everything right, it could be that it's from later on and not from before. As long as it's, remember, the same oila we said before, or very close to each other. Yeah.
How do we know, and are we cautious, that there was something on her clothing? She did the chafifa, she did the iyam, she did everything, and then she got dressed to go to the mikvah. Right. How do we know there's not something from the clothing?
Excellent question. Maybe there's some bubble gum in her clothes.
From the kid did something, whatever.
Yeah, so the Shach brings this one down. He says like this, I'll read it from inside. Muteres lilboish, the lodomi lenosno tafshili. This clothing is not the same. It's not compared to giving food to her child. It's not very common for there to be something on the clothing, something moist, that would easily attach itself or stick to the goof of the Isha. So, it's, I guess, statistics.
Okay.
Alright, that does it for Siman Kuf Tzadik Tes. Now we have one seif in Siman Reish. Very interesting seif. When should the woman do the bracha of the tefillah? What's the question? When should she do the bracha? It's brought down in various places in the Gemara that for the most part, kol ha-mitzvahs, one is mevarach aleihem, one does the bracha oiver la'siyosan, prior to fulfilling the mitzvah, prior to being mekayim the mitzvah of lulav, arba minim, right? You turn the esrog upside down, or you don't pick it up, so you're not fulfilling the mitzvah before you make the bracha, before you tie the knot on the tefillin. So that's a general rule, a klal, with brachas, that prior to doing the mitzvah, prior to fulfilling the mitzvah, that is when you make the bracha. But the Gemara says, with the exception of tevilah. With tevilah, it's done a little bit different. It's done after one dips inside. Does that mean all tevilahs? For everyone that needs a tevilah? Man, woman, including a ger? Or is it only certain tefillahs? So on that there's a machlokes. There's several machlokes in here. The first machlokes, you can see from the way Rashi learns and Tosfos learns, that first of all, why is tevilah in general different? Before we get to which tefillahs, why should tevilah be any different? So Rashi just says, based on what the Gemara says, that lo chazi, he's not yet ready. Who's not yet ready? So if you're talking about Takanas Ezra, there was a Takana that Ezra Sofer made that anyone who was a Bal Keri should not learn or make brachas prior to going into the tevilah, even though this Takana was later Nizbatel. It's understood that he's not ready yet. He's not clean. He has to dip, become clean, and then make a bracha. Or like Tosfos learns. Tosfos is very pshatim, but one pshat is that they were not mechalek between this tevilah of a Niddah, for example, and the tevilah ger. A ger cannot say Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu. He's not a Jew yet. When does he become a Jew? After he immersed himself into the mikvah. A ger cannot say Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu al tevilah ger. Right? Mm-hmm. Because there's no tzivanu yet. He's not Jewish yet, until after he comes out of the mikvah. So in order not to be mechalik between tevilas ger and other tevilas, they were metakin that by all of them, the bracha should be said later. Alright, but that's one difference. The other machlokes is, does this apply to all tevilas, or just to the tevilas of a ger? So the Baal Halachas Gdolah says that all tevilas means including tevilas Niddah. We are mevarach after the tevilah. I think as Rashi also points out. And the Rambam and the Raavad say that no, the only exception is tevilas ger, you make after the tevilah. Whereas all other tevilas, you make before. So that's the machlokes rishonim. Does this apply to all tevilas, including tevilas Niddah, that the bracha is done after the tevilah? Or like the Rambam and the Raavad learn, that only tevilas ger is done after the bracha, whereas all other tevilas are done as we do other mitzvahs, prior to immersing in the mikvah. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, Keshepoishetas malbushea, when she takes off her clothing, Kesheomedes bechalukah, when she's still somewhat dressed with a robe, Tevorech, she makes the bracha, Shekidishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu al tevilah. Then the tifshat chalukah, then she removes her robe, the titbol, and then she immerses. So the mechaber is of the opinion that you make the bracha before you go down, and that's the minhag of the Sfardim, before you dip. The mechaber adds, v'im lo bircha, if she did not then make the bracha, as tebarech me'acha shetikones atzavoro b'mayim. Then she should make the bracha once she goes down all the way where the water reaches her neck. V'im tzlulim, and if the waters are very clear, which means that she can see parts of her body or parts of the body can be seen, or charton beragleo mevarechas, she moves the water a little bit, like to make him a little bit dirty, to make him a little bit not as clear, and then she makes the bracha. Ramah, Yeshoimim shelo tevarech ad achar tevilah. And I'm going to explain this in a moment. Ramah just says that the meaning of the Ashkenaz women is to make the bracha after the tevilah. Okay. So far, what do we see from the Mechaber? All we know so far is that there are two opinions here as to when to do the bracha. don't you have any other concerns about this kind of a bracha? What about the fact that she's making a bracha without any clothes on? Can you do that?
No. Came the time to say the Shema, so we did it in the Mikvaot.
As we will see, this is not a simple matter. You can't make brachas, you can't daven in front of an erva.
And how do you
when you're naked, you can't daven, make brachas.
When the water's up to your...
But how do you make a bracha after you do something? We do it for Shabbos Lech because otherwise she's Mechal Shabbos.
Right.
That's not
so this is an exception, right? So we said that this Tefillah is an exception.
Right.
For all kinds of reasons. It's not Na'akev, first of all. You're right. L'chatchila, just about every mitzvah is done before.
Before, yeah. Because once you can't, once you've done it, you've already done it.
Yeah, you're right. In a sense, you've already done it, yeah. So, Tefillah is an exception to that rule. Either we're not mechalek, it's the same, like with the ger. There are various explanations that we gave. Why Tefillah is just an exception. That's all. Now the bigger question is, well, how does she do this when she has no clothes on? So if you read the Mechaber, the Mechaber does say
she's dressed.
She's still partially dressed, even though she doesn't really have to, because apparently the Ramah says that she first goes into the water, right? So apparently, according to some, there wouldn't be a problem. And even the Mechaber says that if she's already inside and she hasn't made a bracha, she could still say it. So we see from the various opinions that this is not such a big problem. The question is, why not? If you learn Orach Chaim, as far as the tefillos and brachas, halachas of tefillos and brachas, you see that this is definitely an issue.
Are we saying the water clothes on?
What is that?
She's in effect clothed in the water? The water actually?
No, she's not. Oh, what do you mean, the water?
Is it? Are we saying that so that therefore she's not naked? Are we saying the water constitutes her clothing?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about, yeah.
Okay.
There's various issues over here. In order to properly understand the issues, it's good if we see what the Pri Megadim says in Orach Chaim. In his Akdama there. He brings down the pasuk, the Torah of V'hayam machanecha kadosh v'lo yira'eh v'cha ervas dovar. The Torah says that your camp should be holy, and there shall not be seen any ervas dovar, anything which is not discreet, I guess you can call it that, anything that constitutes an erva amongst you. It's not proper, because the Shekhinah is amongst you. So Chazal learned from that pasuk that one cannot say davar shebekdusha keneged ha'erva. In front of an erva, you cannot say davar shebekdusha. Now, in our case, there's three aspects, or there's three concepts here that involve erva here with the tefillah. Number one, you have a situation where one's physical eyes see an erva. Then it's also in the Torah to say davar shebekdusha when one sees his own erva or somebody else's erva. The second aspect or issue that involves arayas is that even though if he doesn't see it, let's say he's just not looking at himself, right?
Closing the eyes.
Closing the eyes or whatever. Still, there's an inyan of...
It's visible.
It's visible to Hashem. That it should not be seen, even to Hashem. Hashem sees it. And number three is the D'Rabbanan. That even if a person is dressed somewhat, there should be no Gilui Erva where his heart sees the Erva. In other words, if there's no Chatzitza between the heart and the Erva, that means that his heart sees it, the Erva. And this is a machlokes tanoim if that's the halacha or not. But that's the idea behind the gartel. That's the idea. If you wear at least a pair of slacks and a shirt, it's not just one robe like they used to wear in the olden days, then it's less of a problem. So there's a third inyan of that liboy should not see the erva. So coming back to an isha here, when we're dealing with an isha with a niddah, there's a machlokes rishonim. If the Isra of liboy royes ha'erva is even shayach, because by a woman the erva is down below. It's not really visible. You understand what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same. It's not like in a man. So there's a machlokes about that. If that is also an issue, if that issue also applies to a woman. The Shulchan Aruch over there in Orach Chaim Paskins, the Bayishal is not shayach, because the erva is down below. She doesn't see it, so that aspect of it doesn't apply. She doesn't have to be concerned about that aspect of liba roya sa'erva. I mean, everything else does apply to her, being without any clothes on, right? But as far as the third aspect of liba roya sa'erva, that's not shayach by a woman. The Rabbit holds that even by Isha, there's a chisoron of liba roya. Therefore, according to the Rabbit, you need what the Mechaber mentioned, that she should be oicha beragleho, the waters. If they're clear, that she should somehow move them around, that it should not be as clear. By moving the waters around, it makes it less transparent, less visible. But the Shach and Taz, very interestingly, go at length to and elaborate on the chlal, on the whole custom today of how is it that women go into the mikveh and pretty much without any clothing on say the bracha. Because the Ramah says, after saying that the bracha is done later, the Ramah adds, the chein nohagim, the minig is shela'achar tevilah, after the tevilah, be'oido omedes b'tom hamayim, while she's in the water, mechasetz atzmo b'bigdal, she covers herself up with something, some beged, or b'chalugo with a robe, u'mevareches, and then she makes the bracha. So the Ramah, at least in his days, says that the custom was to cover up a little bit to make the bracha. On that, the Shach and Taz say no, that the minig has been, and ever since till today, that a woman does not have to cover herself up once she is in the water. So according to the Ashkenaz minig, since the bracha is going to be said afterwards, not with like the Sephardim minig who make the bracha before. So obviously they have their clothes on, and they dip in just like any other mitzvah where you do the bracha before. But according to this minig, where the tevilah of a niddah is the same like any other tevilah, in other words, like the tevilah of a ger, where it's said afterwards, being in the water is sufficient, as was mentioned now by I think the two of you, that the waters in some ways cover up and act as a kisui of sorts. So they say, the Shach and Taz say that that's the minig. The one she's in the mikveh, even though she has no clothes on, she can go ahead and say the bracha. However, there is an eitzah, and some points can mention it, including the Taz. She should put her arms around herself. She should close her arms in such a way that she's somewhat covering herself a little bit. So the Shach and Taz both agree that one who's standing in the water does not constitute oimed begilui erva, because the waters themselves act as a cover. Even if the waters are clear, as long as he doesn't look there, right? There's not a problem of roya erva.
What about her head?
Well, the hair is not a problem.
She can make the bracha with bare head?
Yeah. With the hair, that would be an erva for others to see. So with other parts of her body, that would constitute an erva. But not for herself. For herself, that would not be a problem. So all we have left over here is the chisoron of libo roya sa'erva. If the waters therefore act as a kisui, as a cover for her, all you have left is liboy, the heart seeing the erva. But we paskin like the Orchos Chaim, that by a woman this does not constitute a chisoron. So the Taz says, okay, to make things better if possible, she should close her arms around her. In other words, she should cover herself with her arms as much as possible, and this is going to be better than doing nothing at all. Not that it's necessary. So halacha lemaisa, A woman who's in the mikveh, whether she was going to make the bracha before and she forgot like the Sfardim, or she follows the Ashkenaz minhag to say it while she's in the mikveh, there's no problem, since the waters in some ways do constitute a kisui. However, there is a shlo, a kodesh, and a lot of people follow it. They don't even know that they're following it. That the way it's done is that you dip the first time, then you make the bracha, and then you dip again. What's the purpose of dipping twice? The first one, to be choishesh for the mechaber. In other words, the first reason, to be choishesh for the mechaber, that you need the bracha before you dip, so then you're going to dip again. And he says that Tosefes Kedusha. So the minhag today is that women either dip 3 times, if we want to count the number 3 altogether, or 7. But as far as the minhag of the Shlo Kodesh, that is already more of trying to be Yoitze, the Mechaber as well. Plus, he says that Tosefes Kedusha. So she dipped in first time, she makes the bracha, and then she's going to dip again. And in this way, she fulfills her obligations according to everybody. But as I said before, many people dip either 3 times or 7 times. Not that it's a necessity, but it's a good thing, I guess, for the Tosefes Kedusha. Basically, there's no need today to cover herself up in the mikveh, but you will find in certain mikvahs that they do have all kinds of cloths for the women to use if they do want to cover their hair or cover themselves a little bit as they're about to say the bracha. But it's not a necessity. The mine is perfectly okay as long as, of course, it reaches still her neck, and pretty much everything is covered to that point, and that's sufficient according to all the poskim today. There's no reason to be machmir in that, unless you follow the Sephardic minhag. Then, of course, it's different. I mean, if you're out of the water, then that's different. But once she's in the water, then that's okay. That's completely acceptable. There's the other question of, wait a minute, it's a bathhouse, in a bathroom. Can you make a brachas in such a place? A mikveh is a pretty clean place. Mm-hmm. There wouldn't be that kind of an issue. And according to what we said before, libo yoroya sa'erva, we paskin, is not an issue over here by a woman because of her nature, the way her body is. So it's only a matter of, is this considered yoya becho ervas davar? It can be seen. So here, I guess most of the body is covered, and that's with the water. That is sufficient for that purposes. Okay, so we're done with Hilchos Niddah.